Hi, it's Marion. Welcome back to the Scorched Earth Kitchen. Today is New Year's Day, so this evening I will be making some traditional New Year's foods to help ensure happiness and prosperity in the new year. Okay, so the foods that I have planned to prepare for you today are cornbread, Hoppin' John, and instead of collards I have a package of frozen chopped spinach because I don't plan to grocery shop until tomorrow and I'm running down the cupboards on my Scorched Earth budget. Okay, so out of the things that I'm going to show you, the cornbread that I plan to make will take the longest. If you're making Hoppin' John and you're making the rice, normally it consists of beans and rice, you'll want to start, and if you're using brown rice, you'll want to start by making the rice. Okay, so it's 5:18 p.m. and the first thing I want to do here is get the oven preheating. 375 is a good temperature for cornbread, so let's go ahead and get that going. Okay, so here are all of the dry ingredients that are needed for this. From left to right, just salt, cornmeal, baking powder, sugar, whatever sugar you have. That's just what I happen to have on hand right now. Likewise for the flour, and I also use a vegan egg replacer that you can buy for $4 or $5 on the baking aisle at Walmart. I'm not only vegan, but I've been allergic to eggs my entire life, so I just don't cook with them. And the first thing you want to do is place all of these into a mixing bowl. And this is everything. So what you see here in the bowl is 1 cup each of the cornmeal and the flour, 1 measured tablespoon of baking powder. I'm pretty heavy-handed with that. I want to be certain that it's going to rise. Another tablespoon of the egg replacer that I just dropped in there dry. You know, when you buy it, it comes with instructions to mix it with water and make a paste, but we're going to do something like that in the next step, so it's just in there dry for now. Let's see, a teaspoon or so of salt, and I think that's it for the dry ingredients. So the first thing you want to do is just grab a whisk and whisk the dry ingredients together, and in a pinch you can use a fork. That's perfectly fine. It just something with tines that'll help to evenly distribute the ingredients. Alright, so right now we are whisking in 1 1/3 cups of soy milk. I started with just 1 cup and it didn't look to me like it was going to be enough, so I'm whisking a little bit more. Alright, that's all blended now, and the last thing I'm going to add is this 1/4 cup, maybe a little bit more, like 1/3, I'm not quite sure, of Earth Balance. That's what I use. If you have regular butter at home, feel free, but it's a good idea to melt it in the microwave first and then go ahead and whisk that in too. Okay, and what you end up with doesn't need to be as thin as pancake batter. It just needs to be thin enough to pour into your muffin pan or your cake pan, whatever you're gonna bake yours in. And then the key is just to make sure that whatever kind of oil you use has blended well with all of the rest. Okay, so now I have greased about half of a muffin pan. This really isn't that big a batch of cornmeal batter or cornbread batter, so I'm not expecting it to fill more than 5 or 6 of the little muffin cups here on the pan, but they are greased and ready to go, so I'm going to go ahead and start doing that now. You might have a little bit of a mess, but no worries. I typically like to spoon in the batter until it's level with the top so that they come out relatively big. Just keep going until it's all in there. Alright, and we're ready to drop these into the oven now. Because of the shape of my oven, this has to go in like so, or maybe I misremembered something. Maybe I'm thinking of a baking sheet. So they're in there now, $3.75. I like to go by smell. I've mentioned that on other occasions. So it's $5.51 now, but I will also plan to just check them around 25-30 minutes, or as I begin to smell cornbread in my house. Okay, and now we are on to the Hoppin' John. The first thing I'm going to do here is heat this, let's see, that's the one, to just below medium. And I'm going to set this down here, and I apologize if the angle's a little weird. I'm just trying to keep my hands free. And as it heats up, this is going to be a vegan recipe. A lot of traditional Hoppin' John recipes call for bacon or something along those lines. I'm going to substitute soy sauce for both oil, because I like to keep some things low fat, and also umami flavor and salt like you would get out of some bacon or other pork mixed in with the beans. So that's going to heat up first, and I'm actually going to cover it so that it doesn't dry out too quickly while I hop over to my counter and start chopping the onion that's going to go in there first. Alright, so to do this, I am taking my last half of a chopped onion out of the fridge, and I wanted to make a point as an aside. One of the biggest favors you can do yourself with chopping onions is to use a knife with some heft. You know, don't use something the size of a steak knife or you're going to struggle. These fancy I have a set of these fancy schmancy Wursthof knives that were given to me a couple of years ago. So I'm going to, and you know, my knife skills aren't the greatest, but when it comes down to it, anybody at all can chop an onion. So if you've never chopped an onion before, the basic way to do it is just to cut it one way, turn it, chop it the other way. I mean, this omits how to actually peel the skin off first, but once you're ready to actually do the chopping, you know, this is pretty much what you do. And just to avoid injury towards the end, I'll just place that last little bit on its side and cut it like so. Okay, so that's that. Okay, and while we were chopping the onion, the soy sauce had a minute to heat up, so now I'm just going to start dropping the onions into this pot by pushing them in using the dull side of the knife, not the one that I used for cuttings. I don't want to wear out the blade. I mean, I have a sharpener, but still, there's no need to shorten its life. And then I'm going to give the onions a quick stir so that the soy sauce coats the onions and the heat helps to basically unstick the pieces from each other. Just like that. And then I'm going to put the lid back on again just to help trap all of that liquid. I'm not cooking with oil, so I don't want it to start sticking to the bottom of the pan. But if I need to, I could always just add a little bit of water and give it another stir. Alright, so now I have my ingredients from the freezer sitting out here. I have a package of Crowder peas, which are similar to black-eyed peas, some chopped frozen spinach, and a couple of chopped and frozen bell peppers from a month or so ago. I'm going to thaw about half of these and place them in the pot with the onions. Okay, so now the onions have had just a few minutes to cook. So let's give them another quick stir. Yeah, you can sort of see how they've released some of their liquid. And now the bell pepper, I basically just took the block of frozen bell pepper, broke it in half, place that half in the bowl, and the other half is back in the freezer now. So these have been thawed until they're kind of warm. So we're going to go ahead and mix them in now. And then the Crowder peas are basically frozen fresh. So the very next thing I need to do is prep them to go in the pot. And while I think of it and the Crowder peas are thawing in the microwave, something else I want to do is add some other flavor enhancements, garlic powder in particular. I have fresh. I'm just feeling kind of lazy, so I'm going to eyeball about a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half. And I think I also want to add some sage. Again, maybe a teaspoon or half a teaspoon, depending on your preference. Some of the recipes that I've found online for Hoppin' John also call for paprika, so hey, why not? I guess that's about a teaspoon as well. Give all of that a good stir. I don't like to add salt to things until the end because you just don't know how much of the liquid's going to cook down and if it's going to taste over salted at the end. Plus, I really don't like having sodium bloat and feeling too fat for my clothes. So I typically just save the salt for when I'm getting ready to actually eat it. Yeah, with some exceptions for things like potatoes. But for now, and plus this has soy sauce in it already, so this may or may not even need any salt by the time it's done. Alright, so it's 6:17 now. Let's see how the cornbread's doing. Oh, what do you know? It's already done. So let's go ahead and grab an oven mitt and take these out. And for the moment, I'm just going to set them right here on the glass cooktop. Okay, so these are now boiling. So let's go ahead and move that from boiling down to, I'm going to say number 5, so that we're not here all night. Maybe give it another quick stir. And before I forget, I also want to add just a little bit of liquid smoke to help give it that sort of umami flavor. And do we have any dried celery? Yes, we do, and now would be the time to add it. I'm just going to eyeball about a tablespoon or so. We don't need a ton. A lot of recipes call for celery. I don't buy celery all that often. I don't mind using it. I just, so many recipes call for a rib of celery, but you get way more than you need, and what are you going to do with it, sort of thing. But I'll actually keep small spice containers of the dried on hand for things like dirty rice and dishes like this, actually. And it smells nice and smoky in here from that rather liberal sprinkling of the liquid smoke. A little bit of that really does go a long way. So now that's all mixed together. Let's cover it back over and just kind of loosely vent it now. Now that that's getting happy doing its own thing, let's shift over here for the last thing I'm going to prepare, which is the spinach. And I'm going to do an olive oil garlic spinach to resemble one that I used to like getting every so often when I worked at the hospital. They had a nice sauteed garlic spinach dish in the food court sometimes. So the first thing I'm going to do off camera is turn the heat up just like the other burner to just below medium, and it's a smaller pot than can cover this surface, so just for ease of videography. And then I'm going to eyeball about 2 tablespoons of olive oil for this. I'm going to let it heat up while I thaw the frozen spinach. Okay, so I've decided after all to go ahead and use some fresh garlic. I really don't think this dish would be the same with the powder. So just a demo for doing that. Just pull off your individual cloves. I think I've got 3 here. Yep. Okay, so this is another instance where a knife with some heft comes in handy. Not so much for the cutting. All I really do is, spinach is done thawing, just kind of sloppily cut it right there. You don't even have to cut it all the way off because what I'm going to show you next, which is that you lay your hefty knife on its side, lay it down like this, and smash the garlic to get the peel off. You might already be familiar with this technique, but just in case. And one more. Hope that was enough. Maybe not. Okay, and these I will actually throw in the freezer in a freezer baggie of scraps that I keep for making veggie broth. And then the next thing I'm going to do is grab my garlic press out of the drawer. Sometimes I'll chop these in half. My garlic press isn't the greatest. I'm kind of glad I got a Bed Bath & Beyond gift card for Christmas because I think I might be going out and buying a better one pretty soon. But the basic idea there is this saves you having to chop garlic. If the individual cloves are a little wide for the one that you're using, then you can always cut them in half and load one or two at a time. You know, and it'll eventually start to find its way out the other side where the holes are drilled. Place the larger pieces back in as needed. Cut this one. And that, my friends, is 3 cloves of garlic using a garlic press. Now let's go ahead and add that to the pan with the olive oil. Okay, so the olive oil is actually pretty hot right now, so what I'm going to do first is actually add the thawed spinach. And the reason why is that when you add, sorry if you can hear the firecrackers in the background, I still got the windows open. The reason I added the spinach first is that when you add garlic to a hot pan, it burns, and when garlic burns, it becomes very bitter tasting, and I don't want that. So whenever you're near the beginning of a recipe and there's something else that needs to go in around the same time as the garlic, like onions or whatever, add that first so that it can cool the pan enough to where it won't be a problem to add the garlic. And I think we're actually there now. I'm going to go ahead and drop the garlic in on top of the spinach there. Just like I demonstrated before with the onion, using the dull side of the blade. And now I'm going to go ahead and, yikes, stir this in. And I've actually reduced the heat slightly, so it's now on the number 4 setting, which is 2 down from medium. Okay, so it's 6:35 now. I just now stirred in the garlic into the spinach, so it's going to do its thing for a few minutes, and I've just taste tested the peas mixture over here, and to my great surprise, it's tasting pretty done, so I'm going to go ahead and reduce the heat on it to one of the lower settings and stir and cover it again. Okay, so the time is now 6:47. I went off the camera for a few minutes, or rather the stove, in order to wash some dishes. because I know I'm going to enjoy this more if I don't have a whole lot of cleaning up to do later. So now this is looking like it's probably done. I haven't taste tested it yet, but I'm going to go ahead and add some salt and pepper. And if it has warmed through, I will go ahead and shut off the heat. Give this a quick stir. I'm going to go ahead and shut the heat off on this now too, since it's already showing signs of kind of just at the point where it's beginning to want to stick to the bottom. I might even drop in just the tiniest bit of water. And if the water's not hot for this, it doesn't really matter because the spinach is plenty hot. Okay. Yum! Yeah, so these turned out great. I'm really happy. They've got a little bit of crunchiness on the top from the caramelized sugar plus the oil, I guess. And they're yum. And truth be told, I really don't feel hungry enough to bother with the rice, so I think I'm just going to leave it in the fridge and go ahead and plan on packing it up with leftovers of all the things that I've made this evening to take to work over the next couple of days. And I'm just going to go ahead and start plating up what I've made. And there we go. The peas, onions, and peppers turned out great, as did the cornbread and the spinach, and it is time for dinner. And that was it. Happy New Year 2019, and thank you so much for watching. And again, I look forward to cooking for you the next time here in the Scorched Earth Kitchen. Bye now.